She pointed at me like a criminal, and I stayed quiet. That one gesture, sharp, cold, full of accusation, cut deeper than anything she had ever said to me in her entire life. Because it didn't come from a stranger. It came from my daughter. Before you begin, take a breath. Because this story starts with a whisper and unravels into a truth no mother should ever face. Stay with me, you'll want to hear every second. The overhead screens flickered between departure times as the morning announcements echoed across JFK Airport. It was 7:12 a.m. exactly. I remember because I had glanced at the clock only moments before everything turned upside down. The smell of burnt coffee drifted through the terminal, and the line behind us shuffled slowly toward the boarding gate. I had been talking about the weather, about how cold the flight might be, about nothing that mattered, and she'd barely responded. I thought she was just tired. I truly did. Then the security officer stepped toward us, her voice firm but hushed, and said, "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." Her hand closed around my arm before I could even ask why. My daughter stepped back. Not in shock. Not in concern. But in relief. That's what made the hair on my arms rise. First I thought I misread it. After all, a mother always wants to believe the best about her child. But then the officer leaned in, so close I felt her breath on my cheek, and whispered, "Don't react. Just follow me." Her grip tightened. My daughter's eyes darted away. Something was terribly wrong. I walked with the officer, calm on the outside, but inside my heartbeat rattled against my ribs like loose coins in a jar. I didn't say a word, not yet. I'd learned long ago that silence reveals more than shouting ever does. My daughter always hated that about me. She said my quietness felt like judgment. Maybe this time it was. We moved past families lining up for boarding, past business travelers rushing with briefcases, past a crying child tugging his father's sleeve. Every sound felt distant, muffled, as though I had stepped into a different world. A world where my daughter stood frozen a few feet behind us with her phone clenched in her hand, a little too tightly, like she was holding onto the final piece of a story she didn't want slipping out. Something flickered across her face, a flash of fear or guilt or something close to triumph. I wasn't sure yet, but it was enough to twist my stomach. The officer guided me toward the glass-walled security room. I'd been in one once years ago when traveling to see my sister, but that time it was random screening. This time, it didn't feel random at all. The room was small, cold, too bright. A single metal table stood in the middle and a second officer waited inside. I took a slow breath. I knew things my daughter didn't know. I carried truths she never suspected. And I had kept certain documents in places she never thought to look. But she didn't need to know that. Not yet. "Please empty your pockets," the second officer said, his tone neutral. I complied. Always did. My palms were steady. My expression calm. But underneath that quiet surface, something old and bitter began to stir. Something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger. Not fear. Something deeper. Something colder. The instinct of a woman who has survived enough betrayals to sense when another one is unfolding right in front of her. My daughter stood outside the glass wall now, watching. Her hands were trembling. Not shaking from worry, shaking from anticipation. And she wouldn't look away from me. "Can you tell me why I'm here?" I asked the officers, keeping my voice low and even. They exchanged a glance. A silent conversation. A hesitation that told me the story they'd been fed wasn't matching their instincts. "Someone reported suspicious behavior," the first officer said finally. Suspicious behavior. Those words hit me like cold water. I turned my head slowly toward the glass. My daughter flinched. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something. Maybe an apology, maybe another lie. But she shut her mouth quickly, almost painfully, like she was afraid the truth might spill out if she let it. That was my second clue. My first clue had been the relief on her face. The second was the fear. The third came moments later when the officers stepped out to speak with her. I couldn't hear through the glass, but I could see everything. Her shoulders stiffened, her jaw set, her breathing quickened. She put a hand to her chest dramatically, a gesture she always used when lying. She looked small, fragile, like a woman trying to appear innocent while holding a burning match behind her back. She even wiped her eyes. Fake tears. I knew them too well. But I didn't interrupt. I didn't bang on the glass. I didn't defend myself. I waited. Curiosity is a powerful weapon when used correctly. People reveal more when they think you're powerless. And for the first time I wanted to hear the exact story my daughter believed was strong enough to ruin me. When the officers came back inside, their expressions had shifted. Not suspicion, confusion. The kind of confusion officers get when a report doesn't match reality. "Ma'am," the younger one said gently, "we need to check your bag as well." My bag. The same bag my daughter had handled this morning while pretending to help me pack. The same bag she insisted on carrying through the parking lot. The same bag she placed at her feet just before security approached. I didn't blink. Of course. They searched it thoroughly. Every zipper. Every compartment. Every folded layer of clothing. And with each passing second, my daughter's face outside the glass room darkened. She was biting her lip now, hard enough to leave a mark. Nothing appeared. Not a single forbidden item. Everything was exactly as I had placed it. The officer looked at me, then looked back at her with slow realization, the kind that drags across a person's face like a shadow. She took a step back from the glass. Her phone dropped slightly from her grip. Her expression cracked. A tiny fracture, but enough to show the truth. Something in her plan had gone wrong. And she had expected something to be found. That was clue number 3. But there was something deeper, something she slipped unintentionally in her panic. When the officers questioned her again, she pointed at my bag, speaking quickly. I caught the faint movement of her lips through the glass. "She keeps important documents in there, she always does. Always does." Oh. I never kept important documents in that bag. Never once in 20 years. Unless she thought she had seen something. Unless she had been searching somewhere else. Unless she had been planning this longer than just this morning. The realization pricked at the back of my neck. But I didn't let the officers see that I understood. I didn't let my daughter know I had caught the slip. I simply folded my hands and waited. Time stretched. The hum of the air conditioning filled the room. Footsteps and announcements echoed outside. My daughter's face grew pale, then flushed, then pale again. She was fighting a losing battle and she knew it. When the officers finally returned to me, the tone in their voices had changed completely. "Ma'am, everything looks in order." They didn't apologize, they never do, but they stepped back respectfully, giving me space, their eyes softening just enough to show they understood something was off, but couldn't prove it. I thanked them politely. My voice was steady. My movements controlled. I walked toward the door slowly, giving my daughter plenty of time to feel the weight of her unraveling plan. When I stepped outside the glass room, she took one step forward, then froze. Her eyes darted across my face like she was searching for fury, fear, confusion, anything. But I gave her nothing. Nothing but quiet. Quiet is unsettling. Quiet is powerful. Quiet makes guilty people panic. She whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't want this to go wrong. Wrong. Not, I didn't want this to happen. Not, I didn't do anything. But go wrong. Her own words betrayed her. I lifted my chin, meeting her eyes fully for the first time since the officer grabbed my arm. The cold fluorescent lights above us flickered once, casting a small shadow across her face. "Tell me," I said softly, "what exactly were you expecting to happen?" Her lips trembled. Her throat tightened. Her fingers curled into fists. She didn't answer. She couldn't. And that silence, her silence, was all I needed. I stepped closer to her. Not threatening. Not angry. Just close enough so she felt the shift in power. The shift she never saw coming. I lowered my voice, letting every word fall slowly. "This isn't over." She flinched like I had struck her. But I simply turned away. And walked toward the terminal windows where the morning sun was rising over the runway, ready for the next part of the story she never thought I'd live to tell. I didn't look back at her as I stood by the terminal windows. The morning sun washed the glass in pale gold, and planes taxied slowly across the runway, engines humming like a distant warning. I kept my breathing steady, matching that low vibration, letting the rhythm ground me. My daughter stood behind me somewhere. I could feel her presence the way you sense warmth behind a closed door, but I didn't turn toward her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to give her that much of myself. A soft chime echoed through the airport as a boarding announcement played overhead. People shuffled past with rolling suitcases and steaming cups of airport coffee. Their casual conversations and tired smiles felt unreal compared to the knot tightening in my stomach. But I refused to fall apart in front of her. Not here. Not now. Ma'am? A voice came from behind me. For a moment I thought it was her. My shoulders stiffened. But when I turned, it was the older of the two officers. The one with gray threading through his sideburns and a look in his eyes that suggested he'd seen all types of people, all types of lies. "We need you to step back into the room for a moment," he said gently. "There's something we need to clarify." My heartbeat faltered. Not in fear but in that cold, heavy way a person feels when the truth is about to reveal itself piece by piece. I nodded without speaking and followed him. My daughter lingered near the seating area, pretending to scroll through her phone, though her hands were trembling badly enough for me to notice even from a distance. Inside the room again, the fluorescent lights felt even harsher. The air was colder. The younger officer stood by the table, my bag open in front of him. But the way he looked at me had shifted. Less suspicion, more uncertainty. "We're not accusing you of anything," he said carefully, "but we need to understand something." He gestured to a small clear plastic bag on the table. Inside it was a folded scrap of paper. "This was in your side pocket," he said. "Do you recognize it?" I frowned. I hadn't placed anything in the side pocket. I hadn't even used it in years. He handed it to me. The paper was thin, torn at the edges, and had a faint scent of my daughter's perfume. Lavender and something too sweet for my liking. When I unfolded it, a chill crept down my spine. It wasn't a threatening note. Nothing dramatic. Just an address. A time. And my name. Written in her handwriting. My throat tightened. "This wasn't mine," I said quietly. The officers exchanged a look again. The younger one asked, "Who had access to your bag this morning?" I could have told them everything right then. About her stepping back, her trembling hands, her strange relief earlier, her fake tears. But something inside me stopped. Not out of maternal loyalty. That emotion had been drained long ago during arguments, silences, and disappointments she never knew she caused. But I stayed quiet because I needed to hear more. Needed to know what else had slipped through the cracks. "She helped me with it," I said softly. "Only for a few minutes." A small understatement. She had hovered over it like a guard over treasure. The older officer nodded, as though this confirmed something they had already suspected. "We reviewed part of the security footage," he said. "Your daughter seemed nervous. She stayed close to the bag the entire time." My breath caught. They had noticed. I wasn't imagining any of it. But before I could respond, the officer continued, "We're trying to determine whether this note is connected to the report we received." "What report exactly?" I asked. My voice was almost too steady even for me. He cleared his throat. "Someone claimed you were exhibiting erratic behavior and discussing harmful items in your possession." He paused, weighing his next words carefully. "The caller insisted we search your belongings immediately." Caller. Not random screening. Not routine inspection. A caller. My chest tightened. "Who made the call?" "We can't disclose that yet," the younger one said quickly, a neutral line of protocol. But both their eyes flickered toward the glass wall, toward the place where she had stood moments earlier. I didn't need an official answer. I already knew. Still I pressed gently. "The caller was a woman, wasn't it?" The older officer's silence was confirmation enough. For a long moment no one spoke. The hum of the ventilation system filled the room, and the bright lights glared down on that single piece of paper still shaking slightly in my hands. But instead of anger, something else slid over me, something cold, clean, and clarifying. My instincts were no longer guessing. They were aligning. My suspicions weren't imagined. They were becoming real. "Ma'am," the younger officer said after a pause, "did you notice anything unusual in her behavior this morning? Anything that stood out?" "Yes," I answered honestly. But I didn't know what it meant at the time. I remembered her rushing me out of the house, saying we shouldn't be late even though we were an hour early. I remembered her pushing my bag toward me, zipped and ready, before I had even finished breakfast. I remembered her staring at me when I locked my bedroom door to change, something she never used to do. And the phone call she made in the hallway when she thought I couldn't hear. "Fine," she had whispered sharply. "Just do it. I'll stall her." I had brushed it off as a conversation with a friend. But now, those words echoed in my mind like a warning I should have heard more clearly. Still, I didn't tell the officers everything. Part of me felt ashamed. Another part wanted to protect myself until I understood the whole picture. And another part, maybe the strongest, wanted to hear directly from my daughter's own lips what she had done. The officers asked me to stay seated while they stepped out. Through the glass I saw them approach her. She straightened immediately, plastering on that innocent expression she had perfected over the years. Her shoulders hunched slightly, as if shrinking into a vulnerable version of herself. She even pressed a hand to her chest again, feigning worry. But the officers' faces didn't soften this time. I watched them question her. Slowly, methodically. Her movements changed, small at first, barely noticeable. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes darted left and right. Her breathing grew shallow. She began over-explaining, using too many words, adding details no one had asked about. These were her old tells. Ones I had learned through years of parenting a child who believed lies could smooth over every conflict. While she talked, I noticed something else. Her purse was tucked under her arm, and sticking out of the side pocket was a set of keys. Not hers. The keys to my desk. My file drawers. My lockbox. My stomach twisted into a hard, cold knot. Had she been searching through my things before we left? Had she found something she thought she could use against me? Or worse, something she thought she could steal? I closed my eyes for a moment as the world tilted slightly. The revelation wasn't complete yet, but it was forming like a puzzle with too many matching pieces. A few minutes later the officers returned. This time they closed the door behind them. "Ma'am," the older one said carefully, "your daughter's statements don't match what we found in your bag or on the footage." A confirmation. Not the whole story, but a confirmation. He hesitated before adding, "She appeared unsure about some of her claims." Unsure. A polite, professional word for lying. I let out a slow breath. "Am I free to go?" "Yes," he said. "But we'd like you to stay nearby for a while. We may need to ask more questions." I nodded politely, even though I already knew I wouldn't be going far. Not until I spoke to my daughter myself. As I stepped out of the glass room, she was waiting for me. Her face pale. Eyes wide. Lips pressed so tight they were almost white. She didn't speak. She just stared at me like she was afraid the truth might spill out of her mouth if she opened it. For the first time that morning I met her gaze without looking away. And in that moment I saw it. Something dark, something desperate, something she had been hiding under layers of practiced innocence. Fear. Not fear of me, but fear of being caught. I walked past her slowly, not breaking eye contact until the very last second. Her breath hitched when I whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. "You should be very careful now." She froze. A shiver ran through her shoulders. She clutched her purse tighter, those keys brushing against her fingers like a silent admission. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Not while the story was still unraveling. But every suspicion I had, every doubt, every instinct, was now confirmed. And I knew without question that this was only the beginning. I didn't speak to her as we left the airport. I didn't need to. The silence between us did more damage than any words I could have thrown her way. She walked half a step behind me, shoulders tense, fingers curled tightly around her purse strap. Every few seconds she glanced at me as if checking whether I planned to confront her right there in front of all those strangers. But I stayed quiet. I let her wonder. I let her sit with the weight of what she had done. The drive home was suffocating. The morning traffic was thicker than usual, cars edging forward slowly, horns echoing off the concrete walls of the expressway. She kept her eyes trained on the window, pretending to admire the passing skyline, though I could see her knee bouncing nervously. I didn't turn the radio on. I didn't attempt conversation. The only sounds were the steady hum of the engine and the faint clicking of her fingernail tapping against her phone screen as she typed messages she didn't want me reading. At one point she opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words arrived. Instead she shut her lips again and sank deeper into her seat, twisting her hair around her finger. She looked smaller, younger, almost frightened. I wondered whether she feared being caught or feared what she might see in my eyes. I didn't offer her comfort. Not this time. When we finally turned onto my street, the familiar quiet of the neighborhood wrapped around us. Oak trees shading the sidewalks, mailboxes leaning slightly from years of weather, the faint smell of someone's early lunch drifting through the air. Everything looked exactly as I had left it. But I sensed something different. Something underneath the quiet. I unlocked the front door slowly, half expecting her to speak up, to give me some version of the truth before we stepped inside. But she didn't. She simply followed me in, placing her purse on the entry table like she always did, trying to act normal. That's when I felt it. An unsettling shift, subtle but sharp, like a breeze from a window I didn't remember opening. My house had a particular scent. Old hardwood floors, lavender cleaner, and the faint lingering warmth from my morning tea. But today, it smelled slightly off. Not wrong, just different. A scent I couldn't place at first. "Mom," she said gently, breaking the silence. "Maybe we should talk." "No," I cut in, my voice steady. "Not yet." Her mouth closed, and the quiet settled again like dust in sunlight. I walked into the living room. The cushions looked untouched. The blanket draped over the sofa was perfectly straight. Nothing obvious screamed disturbance. Yet my intuition, my strongest old companion, kept nudging me. I moved through the house slowly, paying attention to the little things. The details. Details never lie. A coaster slightly out of place on the coffee table. A lamp angled differently. The hallway rug misaligned by an inch. Tiny things. Small signs. But signs all the same. I wasn't a suspicious woman by nature. I raised my daughter with trust, faith, and kindness, even when she didn't deserve it. But after that morning, I couldn't ignore my instincts. I headed toward my bedroom. That scent, faint but wrong, grew stronger. When I opened the door, the air felt different. Still but disturbed. A subtle shift in the atmosphere only someone who has lived in the same home for decades could detect. My daughter stopped in the doorway behind me. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Her voice wavered. I didn't answer. Not yet. My desk sat in the corner. Oak, old, sturdy. My late husband had built it with his own hands back when we had more love than money. It had always been my safe place, my private place. And I never allowed anyone to go rifling through it. The top drawer was shut. But not fully. Half an inch. Barely noticeable. But to me it screamed aloud. I walked toward it slowly, my hand brushing the edge of the desk. "Did you go in here?" I asked calmly. He stiffened. "In your desk? Why would I?" Her tone was too quick. Too defensive. I pulled the drawer open. My documents were there. Yes. My envelopes. My old receipts. My checkbook. But they were not where I had left them. The neat stack I kept aligned on the right was now shifted left. A pen was missing from its holder. Someone had been inside, and hurriedly. A cold heaviness settled into my chest. I opened the second drawer. More disarray. Papers pushed back. A binder slightly opened. Old letters shifted around. Someone had been looking for something, and they had looked with urgency. My daughter stepped farther into the room. "Mom, you're scaring me." "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Because something isn't right," I said. She pressed her lips together. "Maybe you forgot how you left things." "I don't forget my own home," I replied. The third drawer, the one with my private papers, was the worst. The folder containing my property records had been moved entirely. A printout of my most recent bank statement was out of its envelope. And the key to my lockbox, which always rested beneath my notepad, was sitting on top of it instead. She must have seen the change in my face because she took a step back. "Mom, listen. I think you're misunderstanding." But I wasn't. Not anymore. I closed the drawer slowly. Deliberately. My heartbeat remained steady, but a cold numbness spread through my arms. A mix of disbelief and realization. She hadn't just made a mistake. She hadn't had a moment of panic. She had prepared. She had searched. She had planned. She had taken my keys. "What were you looking for?" I asked quietly. She swallowed hard. "Nothing. I wasn't in here." "Then how do you explain the drawers?" Her eyes widened. Maybe the house cleaner." "We don't have a house cleaner," I interrupted. "I stopped the service months ago." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. "Why are my papers moved?" I asked again. She shifted her weight from foot to foot. "Mom, please. I don't know what you're talking about." But her voice trembled, betraying her. I stepped away from the desk and walked toward my closet. The door creaked softly. I reached up to the top shelf, to the small metal tin where I kept old spare keys. Keys to nothing important anymore but sentimental. When I lifted the lid, I felt my stomach drop. Empty spaces. 3 of them. "Where are they?" I whispered. She blinked. Where is what? My spare keys. Her breath caught audibly. My heart cracked, not from anger but from something far older. A sorrow formed from the pieces of a mother's hope. I had always believed that no matter how difficult she became, she would never violate the sanctity of my home. Never dig through my private things. Never treat me like an obstacle instead of a parent. But she had. I put the tin back slowly, my hand steady despite the ache in my chest. You were here yesterday, I said softly. Before we left. Weren't you? Her silence was confirmation. I walked past her without touching her. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew if I did I would collapse. I needed to stay upright to understand the depth of what she had done. I moved through the hallway into the guest room, the one she slept in when she visited. The bed was made perfectly. But the nightstand drawer was open a few inches. Inside, tucked between two old magazines, was one of my missing spare keys. Not hidden well. Hidden quickly. As if she hadn't expected me to come home early enough to notice. I picked it up and held it carefully. The metal felt warm from being wedged inside the drawer, but it sent a cold shiver through me. Why did she need my keys? What had she planned to do next? And what had she already done? Downstairs, the refrigerator hummed softly. A neighbor's lawnmower buzzed faintly in the distance. The world around me was painfully normal while my entire understanding of my daughter fractured. When I returned to the living room, she was sitting on the couch, elbows on her knees, her hands covering her face. Mom, she said through her fingers, I didn't mean for things to get this far. There was not denial, not outrage, not innocence, admission, half-truth, fear. What exactly got this far? I asked. She looked up slowly, eyes wet but not with genuine sorrow. More like panic. I made mistakes. Mistakes like going through my home? I asked. Or mistakes like calling the airport on me? Her face went pale. She hadn't expected me to connect the dots so quickly. But I had. And the picture forming in my mind was darker than I ever anticipated. She stood abruptly. Mom, I was just trying to protect us. I thought. No, I said firmly. Do not twist this. Her mouth closed immediately. I stepped closer, keeping my voice calm. I need to know everything you did. Her lips trembled. You don't understand. I understand enough to know you were prepared, I replied. Prepared to do something you can't admit yet. She took a shaky breath. Can we sit down? Please. But I didn't sit. Not yet. Not until I understood the depth of the betrayal. Whatever you were looking for, I said quietly, you didn't find it. Her eyes flickered with something, fear, shock, disappointment, all at once. That reaction told me more than her words ever could. She had been searching for something specific. Something she believed was inside this house. Something she believed she needed badly enough to lie, to search, to accuse me in public. I didn't reveal that I had moved certain papers weeks ago. I didn't tell her that some things she expected to find were no longer here. Instead, I met her eyes and said, "This is your moment to tell me the truth." She opened her mouth. But then she closed it. And that silence, that painful silence, told me whatever she had done, whatever she had planned, went deeper than I ever imagined. And I knew then. I was only beginning to uncover the truth. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever she planned wasn't finished yet. And the only way to protect myself now was to move quietly. Quiet enough that she wouldn't realize what I was doing until it was far too late for her to undo it. She stood frozen in the living room, her eyes still wet, her breath shallow, her fingers gripping the back of the couch so tightly her knuckles turned pale. I watched her for a moment, not out of pity but out of calculation. For 65 years I had lived my life believing the best in people, especially my own child. But now I understood something older women learn too late. Sometimes you must protect yourself even from the ones you raised. I need some air, I said quietly. Before she could react, I walked past her, out the front door and onto the porch. The afternoon sunlight felt warm on my skin, but the air itself carried a bite, sharp enough to clear my thoughts. A blue jay perched on the fence post, watching me with tilted curiosity. Even the bird seemed to sense the tension. I sat on the porch chair and closed my eyes for a moment, letting the breeze steady me. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't panicking. But a dull ache pressed behind my ribs, the kind you get when something you trusted slips away in the dark. I reached into my pocket, feeling the outline of my phone. My hands moved slowly, deliberately. I had always told people that aging taught me patience. What I never admitted was that it had taught me something more dangerous: restraint. I opened the voice memo app and began recording. Not to capture her voice, but to capture mine. My observations. My discoveries. My timeline. A simple, steady narration. Date, time, what I found in the drawers, the missing keys, the airport incident, the staged note. Everything. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just facts. Facts that would matter later. When I finished, I saved it under a plain title: House Notes, April. Nothing suspicious. Nothing alarming. Nothing she'd look at twice if she ever touched my phone. But it was my first move. When I walked back inside, she was pretending to straighten the pillows, her movements too perfect, too rehearsed. She looked up at me with a shaky attempt at a smile. "Mom, can we sit down?" "Not right now," I said softly. "I need to check something." Her eyes followed me as I walked to my bedroom again. She didn't dare come inside this time. She hovered near the hallway instead, pretending to scroll through her phone but glancing up every few seconds, waiting to see what I would do. I pulled my old organizer box from the closet shelf, the one with my tax documents, my mortgage records, and letters my husband wrote me decades ago. I set it gently on the bed and opened it. She couldn't see what was inside from where she stood, but she could see my back stiffen slightly as I examined the contents. The envelope with my insurance documents was opened crookedly. The corners of my property appraisal papers were bent. A copy of my will was missing entirely. My heart sank, but not with shock, more with confirmation. She hadn't been searching aimlessly. She had been targeting very specific things. Things related to my home, my future, my stability. I didn't let her see my reaction. Instead, I took a slow, grounding breath and gathered all the documents I still had into a neat pile. I slipped them into a new folder, one I kept in a place she didn't know existed. A small storage compartment at the back of my closet, hidden behind a panel most people assumed was just decorative trim. I pushed the panel aside, slid the papers inside, and closed it. Only then did I turn to face her. Her eyes darted away quickly like a child caught peeking. "I'm making tea," I said. "Tea gives people comfort. Tea lowers their guard. Tea creates the illusion of normalcy." She followed me downstairs, watching me closely but saying nothing. I filled the kettle, set it on the stove, and leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely. The kitchen filled with the soft hiss of heating water. The smell of peppermint tea leaves, my favorite, drifted through the air. She sat at the table, fidgeting with the placemat. "Mom, I know things look strange, but I can explain." I didn't react. Not even with a blink. "I think you're overthinking everything," she continued. "Maybe you just misplaced some documents. Maybe the drawers weren't how you remembered. You've been stressed lately. Traveling, the airport, it's a lot." Her words were gentle, soft, almost soothing. But they were hollow. And worse, manipulative. He was trying to gaslight me. To make me question what I saw with my own eyes. But she didn't know I had already taken pictures of the disturbed drawers. While she was pretending to straighten the pillows, I had quietly snapped photos of everything. Every misplaced paper, every moved item, every sign of intrusion. Evidence she herself had created. I let her talk though. Let her spin her story. The more someone explains, the more holes they reveal. When the kettle clicked off, she jumped slightly. I poured the water into 2 mugs and set one in front of her. She wrapped her hands around it, though she didn't take a sip. "Mom, just talk to me," she whispered. I sat down across from her. I kept my voice calm. "Tell me why you called the airport." Her entire body stiffened. I didn't. Why would I? That's ridiculous." Her denial came too fast. Too sharp. Too prepared. "It was a woman's voice," I said, watching her carefully. She froze for half a second. "Just one. But enough." "I don't know anything about that," she murmured, eyes dropping to her tea. I slid my hand slowly across the table and placed it on her wrist. She looked up, surprised. "Whatever you're doing," I said gently, "you need to stop." Her breath hitched. That tiny reaction told me everything. She wasn't finished. Whatever she had planned was still underway. I could practically see the calculations spinning behind her eyes. But I wasn't going to confront her with accusations she could deny. Well, I needed more. and I needed it quietly. "Let's rest," I said. "We've had a long morning." She nodded quickly, too quickly, and pushed her chair back. She went upstairs to shower, leaving her purse on the table. She never left her purse unattended. Never. The moment I heard the water running, I moved. Not out of spite. Out of survival. I opened her purse carefully. Inside were things that made my chest tighten. A folded copy of my bank statement. One I never printed. A list of account numbers in her handwriting. A small notebook with dates and reminders scribbled inside. And tucked in the deepest pocket, a slip of paper with the same address as the note found in my bag. My breath nearly stopped. Not fear. Realization. She had been planning something that involved my accounts, my house, and possibly meeting someone else. Someone who had given her instructions. I took pictures of everything, closed the purse, and returned it to its place just as the shower shut off upstairs. By the time she came back down, hair wrapped in a towel, eyes red but dry, I was sitting calmly with my tea, scrolling through my phone like nothing had happened. She sat across from me again. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said softly. And I was. Because now I knew exactly what she had been hiding. That afternoon, while she napped on the couch from stress, I made my counterattack quiet, careful, and precise. I drove to the bank and met with Mr. Carter, the advisor who had handled my accounts for years. I trusted him because he was patient and thorough, and because he had always treated me with respect, even when I asked questions slowly or needed extra explanation. I told him I wanted to move everything into a protected trust. A permanent one. Irrevocable. Something no one could touch but me. He looked concerned but didn't pry. "Mrs. Hayes, I can do that today if you're sure." "I'm sure," I said. We went through every document, every signature, every account. I listened carefully. I asked questions. I didn't rush. By the time I left, my assets were locked away in a place my daughter couldn't reach even if she tried. But I wasn't finished. I then drove to the small law office near the courthouse. The one with the big oak desk and the receptionist who always wore bright scarves. I requested an appointment with an attorney who specialized in elder protection and fraud. The receptionist squeezed me in for later that day. When I met the lawyer, a calm, steady woman with kind eyes, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I simply told her what had happened at the airport, what I found at home, and what I suspected without stating everything explicitly. She took notes slowly. "Do you have any documentation?" "I do," I said. "And I'm gathering more." She nodded. "Good. Quiet steps are sometimes the safest." She didn't know how true her words were. By the time I drove back home, the sun was dipping low, casting a warm glow across the yard. My daughter sat on the porch, arms folded, pretending to enjoy the evening. She smiled when she saw me, sweet, fragile, false. "Where were you?" she asked. "Running errands," I replied. She didn't press. Not yet. But she sensed something was shifting. Something she couldn't control. And as I sat beside her, watching the sky fade into soft orange light, I understood something with a clarity that felt both painful and empowering. She had built a trap for me. And quietly, slowly, patiently, I had begun building one for her. But I never raised my voice. I never accused her. I never revealed what I knew. Because my silent counterattack had only just begun. But what surprised me most as I sat beside her on that quiet porch was how calm I felt. There was no trembling in my hands, no wild beating in my chest. Just a slow, steady certainty settling deep into my bones. For the first time in years, I felt like I had stepped back into myself. Into the woman I used to be before fear, guilt, and hope for her approval kept me small. She looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's nice out," she said lightly, trying to sound normal. "It is," I replied. My voice was softer than I expected. A long silence stretched between us. One of those silences that isn't empty at all, but full of everything unspoken. The crickets hummed in the grass. Somewhere down the street a dog barked twice. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead. The normalcy of it all almost made me forget what had happened. Almost. But then she shifted in her seat, gripping her mug more tightly, and I saw the flicker of unease, or anticipation, in her eyes. She wasn't at peace. She wasn't calm. She was waiting. Waiting for something to happen. Something she had planned. And in that moment I realized, My revenge wasn't going to come from destroying her the way she tried to destroy me. It was going to come from letting the truth destroy her on its own. Mom, she said softly, is everything okay between us? Her voice quivered around the edges, betraying the fear she was trying desperately to hide. I turned to look at her fully. Her face looked older somehow, not by years but by the weight of her choices. Choices she thought she could bury. Choices she didn't know were already unraveling. For now, I said quietly. Her eyes widened slightly at my answer, unsure what it meant. But I didn't explain. I didn't soothe. I didn't comfort. Instead, I stood up, brushing off my hands. Come inside, I said. I need to talk to you. She swallowed hard but followed me. Inside, the house felt cooler, calmer. I walked into the living room and sat in the armchair, the one I used whenever I needed to think. She hovered in front of me like a child waiting to be scolded. I gestured toward the couch. Sit. She obeyed, her back straight, hands clasped so tightly I could see the tension in her fingers. I watched her for a long moment, letting the silence work the way it always does, revealing cracks without saying a word. Then very slowly I placed my phone on the table between us. Her eyes flickered to it, panic flashing in her gaze. Earlier today, I began, I found something inside your purse. She flinched but didn't speak. And yesterday, I continued, you were here, in my room, in my drawers, using keys that don't belong to you. Mom. I held up a hand, stopping her. Don't lie to me again. Not now. Her lips parted but she closed them again, the fight in her deflating slightly. I don't know what you're talking about, she whispered weakly. And at the airport, I said steadily, you stepped away when the officer grabbed me. You didn't ask what was happening. You didn't try to help. You didn't even look surprised. Her breath caught. That's not fair. It's true, I said simply. She blinked rapidly, her composure cracking. I was scared. Of what? I asked. That I would be taken away? Or that your plan would fall apart? Her face drained of color. The truth was no longer something I needed her to confess. It was something she had already admitted in 1,000 silent ways. Every tremor in her voice. Every lie she tried to soften. Every missing document. Every moved key. She knew she was caught. He just didn't know how much I knew. I picked up my phone again. I spoke with someone today, I said. Someone who understands what to do when a person is targeted by their own family. Her eyes went wide. What? Who? Someone who deals with fraud, I answered plainly. Someone who knows how to protect people like me. She swallowed hard. Mom, please, are you trying to ruin my life? You tried to ruin mine first. Her face crumpled, but not with remorse. With fear. Real fear. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. I needed help. Help. I repeated softly. So you searched my home? Tried to access my accounts? Called security at an airport and accused me of carrying dangerous items. She covered her face with her hands. I wasn't thinking. I panicked. That's not panic, I said. That's planning. She lowered her hands slowly, revealing eyes that were glistening but not with sincerity. I was scared about my finances. I thought maybe if I understood what you had, I could see if you could help me. You wanted to see what you could take, I corrected calmly. There's a difference. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. Mom, she whispered, reaching out slightly. I'm your daughter. I know, I said quietly. The grief in my chest was heavy but no longer overwhelming. And that's why this hurts as much as it does. Her lips trembled. Please don't punish me. I exhaled slowly, absorbing that plea. Punish you. I echoed. You think this is about punishment? She looked confused, hopeful even, for a moment. This, I said, placing my hand over my heart, is about truth. And safety. And respect. Things you stopped giving me a long time ago. The room fell into a thick silence. Then slowly I stood. She watched me with wide, fearful eyes. I walked to my desk drawer, not the one she had rifled through, but the locked compartment she hadn't known existed. I pulled out a folder, closed it, and held it in my hands. This, I said, is all the documentation you were looking for. The things you didn't find. Her breath quickened. Mom, don't. I didn't hand it to her. I didn't open it. I simply placed it inside my purse. You won't touch this, I said gently. Not now. Not ever. Tears streamed down her cheeks, free-flowing now, uncontrollable, but still not remorseful. They were tears of loss. Loss of control. Loss of access. Loss of whatever she thought was hers. I was your only child, she whispered shakily. I thought you'd take care of me. I tried, I said softly. I raised you. I helped you. I forgave you, more times than you deserved. She sobbed harder. So you're giving up on me? No, I said. I'm choosing myself. She shook her head in disbelief, like she couldn't understand the words. What does that even mean? It means I've protected everything you tried to take, I said. My home. My accounts. My documents. Mom. It means the investigators will have everything they need. Her mouth fell open. What? And it means, I said steadily, that when they come to you I won't stand in their way. She recoiled as if I had struck her. Mom, please, don't do this. You did this, I said gently. I'm simply letting the truth show itself. Her sobbing turned frantic. I'll change, please, I'll fix it. Maybe, I said honestly. Maybe not. But whether you change or not, I closed my purse, lifted my chin, you won't hurt me again. The doorbell rang. She froze. I didn't. I walked toward the front door, her voice breaking behind me. Mom. No, Mom, wait. But I didn't stop. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood on the porch. The same ones from the airport. Their expressions were calm but firm. Mrs. Hayes, the older officer said respectfully. May we speak with your daughter again? I stepped aside. She collapsed onto the couch behind me, shaking violently as they approached her. Ma'am, the officer said gently, we need you to come with us for questioning. Her sob broke into a wail. Mom. Help me, please. I turned to her slowly, my voice soft, almost tender. This is the moment you created, I said. And the moment you must face. They lifted her gently, guiding her toward the door. She clung to the frame as they led her out, her eyes begging mine for rescue. But I simply whispered. You'll learn now what I learned long ago. Actions have consequences. And as she was taken away, a strange peace filled my chest. Not joy. Not triumph. Just peace. A quiet peace that comes only when a woman finally chooses herself. When the door closed behind them, the house felt lighter. Warmer. Mine again. I walked to the window and watched the car pull away. The sun dipped low over the trees, casting a soft glow on the yard. The evening breeze drifted through the curtains. And I realized with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I had not lost a daughter. I had reclaimed myself. The peace wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a soft, steady thing. The kind of peace a woman earns. The moment she stops begging to be respected. And starts respecting herself. And with that quiet peace warming my chest, I whispered the final truth. I am free. If this story touched something inside you, your strength, your wounds, or your hope, subscribe for more powerful revenge stories. Your support helps me share the voices of women who refuse to stay silent.